Hey, welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, if I may date myself and use a little Emerson, Lake, and Palmer reference there. Folks, the more that I have considered the impact of the release of this last tranche, or latest, excuse me, not last, but latest tranche of the Epstein files, the more I think back, the piece I wrote over the weekend on Sunday, called the Epstein Iceberg. Guys, this is not getting better. This is getting worse by the minute for them. In fact, I'm going to make an argument that the degree to which this is going to break MAGA is only now beginning to be understood. So many of these things in the files have exposed this network of powerful people that are still being protected. So many of the mistakes that the DOJ has made, Todd Blanch, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, even though he fled the scene, bingo bongo, all of this stuff is really adding up to me into a fascinating and terrible area for the administration. First off, by the way, quick thanks to Ground News for sponsoring today's live. They are an amazing resource, amazing ability to give you objective facts. When you're looking at news these days, it's tough all the time to figure out what's good, what's bad, what's true, what's not. Click the link here or scan the QR code on the screen. You'll get a 40% off the Vantage plan, which is the same one I use. We'll talk more about this as we go on into the show today. But look, nothing has gotten better with the Epstein files and Trump this week. The networks that have been exposed now of the people who abuse their power, their money, their position, and their status, and the fact that this administration is now completely continuing to cover for them, the degree to which they have scrubbed the documents of any reference to Trump. At some point, there was a document that got redacted just because instead of the word don't, the woman misspelled it and just said Don. And so they redacted the word Don. This is a scandal that is still unfolding and still unrolling. And I got to tell you, and I'm going to do a longer piece on this tomorrow, but the thing of this whole network that's been exposed of these incredibly rich and powerful people who want to be protected from it, who want to lie about it. I mean, look, I'll give you a perfect example of one of the biggest liars about this of all is Elon. I'm not saying Elon Musk went to the pedophile island, but he sure wanted to. Hey, what night will there be the wildest party? Girls for the win. Thirsty K, all right, is literally begging to come to the freaking island. And then it was like, oh, I never met Jeffrey Epstein. I don't know who he is. And now there's more emails that are being discovered in this whole tranche of emails. Like, want to come to the Caribbean? Yay. And, you know, he had Jeffrey Epstein come visit him at SpaceX in Hawthorne, California. All these things, guys. Steve Bannon, all throughout the Epstein files. This is a guy who was communicating with Jeffrey Epstein almost on a daily basis. Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein were involved in this global far-right shenanigan to try to overturn all democratic Western governments and turn them into authoritarian fascism. And luckily, for a lot of people, this is the first time that some of the things that Bannon and Epstein were doing underneath the water has come to light. I'm talking with a group of friends in the UK on a group chat about this, how much it explains more of the ties between British politicians who were pushing for Brexit, Jeffrey Epstein, and Russia, and Steve Bannon. The origin story of so much stuff that is coming out of these files, the entire Pizzagate bullshit, where, you know, Jack Posobiec and Mike Cernovich and all those creeps and weirdos and incels and dipshits were out promoting the idea that Hillary Clinton ran a secret global pedophile sex ring in a pizza restaurant. Well, there is a secret global pedophile sex ring, apparently. But it's guys from Wall Street. It's guys from Silicon Valley. It's guys from this incredible network of people that were either brought in, walked in, or were lured into Jeffrey Epstein's universe. The entire thing stinks on ice. The entire thing is a madhouse of misinformation. The entire thing is a complete train wreck of misinformation. They want you to believe that this is over. Kash Patel. Oh, it's over. We're done. No more investigations. Brett Ratner, who just directed the Melania movie, which I believe is called Make Fuck Get Green Card, is in the Epstein files. Not just in the Epstein files. He's hanging out with young women with Jeffrey Epstein. The names have been redacted from so many of these files, though. So many of these emails back and forth. So much of this information. And we haven't even seen a lot of the FBI 302s and other information like that yet. All these people in this orbit knew who he was. They knew what he was. Guys, they knew who he was. Even casuals by that point knew who he was. Nothing about Jeffrey Epstein, since the time he got convicted, was a secret. The idea, though, that you're going to spin your way out of this one is increasingly unlikely. Guys, it has infected even the crazy elements now where the MAGA media wants to make this thing go away, but they can't. It's why Fox is still stuck talking about it. It's why even Alex freaking Jones is going through it. Let's play that clip.
Post yesterday, teen Epstein accuser wrote she was used as a human incubator for secret baby who was snatched at birth. But this comes from a person that has been there and seen it all as a former staff at the Zorro. The material below was taken from Jeffrey Epstein home as my insurance in case of future litigation against Epstein. Sorry, no questions. What is damning about Jeffrey Epstein is yet to be written. Did you know somewhere in the hills outside the Zorro, 2 foreign girls were buried on orders of Jeffrey and Madam G. Both died by strangulation during rough fetish sex. And then he links videos of child pornography. Here it says sex with minor, underage girl sex, underage girl rape, suicide attempt.
And we're taking this is video of this happening.
Guys, again, I want to thank Ground News for sponsoring this live today. It means a lot because I like the product. I like the website. I like the app. They've got a website and an app-based system where you're able to go and look at news stories that are out there at scale, that are in the center of these big discussions and debates. And the Epstein stuff, it has been incredibly helpful on some of the Epstein stuff in the last few days. What they do is give you a perspective, not only on what the biases of a story are. They left? Are they right? Are they center? They go through like what media is covering a story. So you'll get to figure out like, okay, well, the right wing is ignoring this story, or the left wing is ignoring that story. It scores it based on how factual it is, which is very helpful.
They analyze every story and look at who covered it and how. They weigh the differences in the coverage, whether it's a liberal-leaning outlet that covers the story or a conservative-leaning outlet that covers the story. They break down how those different areas from the ideological spectrum in our reporting cover big issues of the day.
The bias detection stuff in there is terrific. And you know what? I think it's helpful, especially because Ground News lets you find your blind spots. You know, if you're looking at a story from only one perspective, and look, I try to say that I'm a pretty small C Catholic news consumer. I read a lot, left, right, center, weird, straight news, all kinds of things across the spectrum. But it's helpful to know if you're missing something. But when you look at Ground News product, it also tells you who owns something. So you can look at something and go, oh, well, that story came out of a magazine, a newspaper, other media outlet, a TV outlet. It's owned by Sinclair, or it's owned by Jeff Bezos, or it's owned by Rupert Murdoch. And that in this day and age is truly helpful, because there is an agenda for a lot of corporate news out there. And there is if you want to do it the most gracious way you can say they've got a perspective, but a lot of the times it's an agenda. Ground News helps you fight back against that and find that. Also, like I said, scores the stories on whether they're factual, and the outlets whether they're factual, gives you the tools you need to be an educated and informed news consumer in a time where it's really hard to trust the news. So Ground News, I recommend it. Check it out today. You can get 40% off the Vantage plan, which is the same one I use. Gives you all these great tools. And again, you can either click on my link, which is groundnews.com/Rick, or check that QR code in the screen out, and you can go from there. All right. Meanwhile, back at the collapse of MAGA based on the Epstein files, and I'll tell you why MAGA is driving itself into a frenzy right now. If everything else was okay, right now, if everything else was okay, if the economy was banging, if the world was peaceful, if we didn't have people murdering folks in the streets, government people, to be specific, the Epstein story might be able to be spun away. But this time, Trump has really met his match. And his match is the ghost of Jeffrey Epstein. His match is a man for whom he was very close friends. His match is a man who he was lying about not having any contact with after 2009. There are contemporaneous emails very much showing, I'm hanging out with the Trump boys, going to Mar-a-Lago, blah, blah, blah. None of this, folks, at all is helping MAGA. They are in desperate electoral circumstances right now. So last night, you had the news that Barry Loudermilk in Georgia in an R+12 district is getting out because the race is too hard. You are now seeing the Senate map expanding. You are now seeing candidates, good candidates, coming out of the woodwork who would have thought, oh man, I don't know, 2024 is too hard, Trump on the ballot. No, good Democratic candidates are coming out of the woodwork. There's not a single Republican candidate right now in a seat that's less than R+15 who can sleep at night. Usually, Republican candidates in an R+15 seat or an R+10 seat, they can spend the election on the beach. But it's melting down. Epstein, as I said from the very start of the Epstein story, it has divided them internally in a way that is really hard to overcome. It is really, really hard for them to overcome it because underneath the Epstein mythos they built for themselves back in 2016, excuse me, underneath that mythos, underneath that entire imaginary pizza restaurant, Hillary Clinton story, it wired itself so deeply into the Republican MAGA conspiracy brain that it became this thing that made them feel better about themselves. Oh yeah, Trump's crazy, but at least he's not a pedophile, child predator, cannibal in a pizza restaurant. But nothing's all right in the country for the rest of the stuff now. That comfortable illusion is now shattered. They are seeing his name over and over and over and over and over again in these documents, even though they're redacted to hell and gone. They're seeing Elon's name. They're seeing Bannon's name. This idea that there was a global pedophile sex cult, it was true. But they're allies of Jeffrey Epstein. And they're friends of Jeffrey Epstein. People like Donald Trump. People like Steve Bannon. People like Elon Musk. A few months ago, Trump's attorneys threatened to sue me again because they said, oh, well, you said that the president was a pedophile. I actually didn't say the president was a pedophile. I said what his base fears the most is that they will find that out. And somehow that will come to light out of the Epstein files. That somehow that story will come to light. And I think the Rosetta Stone of all of this shit with Trump, the things we know about his personal character, his personal behavior throughout his whole life, he's always been a scumbag with women. He's always been a dog. He's always been a cheater. The guy's never met a vow or an oath or a promise or a marriage he would uphold, right? Never. And we go back to the moment in 2016 where the Steele dossier, which was initially paid for by a super PAC supporting Marco Rubio. Ask me how I know someday. When it came out, talked about compromise on Trump. Some of it was lurid. Some of it was silly. I never believed the P tape, whatever. But when you match this up with his behavior going into the girls' dressing rooms, all the creepy, grab them by the pussy, all the things, E. Jean Carroll, all the behavior, 27 other women who accused Trump of sexual assault or sexual impropriety, all these things that added up and added up and added up. Even the MAGA folks had a little mental process again. Well, he may be a little crazy and he may say some crazy stuff, but at least he's not a sexual predator like Jeffrey Epstein and George Soros and Barack Obama and the spirit cooking lady, all that crazy shit, right? But in their heads, they keep hearing this information coming together. And humans lived throughout our evolution. We survived because of pattern recognition. Because when you're sitting out there on the savannah and the grass is blowing one way and the wind is blowing another, you're thinking, maybe there's a lion coming through the grass at me. And even the MAGA folks have had this pattern recognition that the projection from Trump, that the lies about this, that the categorical nature of the lies. Oh, these tapes, these documents exonerate me. Let's play the clip about Michael Wolff, because Trump also spoke to Michael Wolff all the time, too, just so you know. This is a whole big incestuous loop going on. Let's play that clip, though.
What did you think of the latest release of Epstein files, and do you think your critics will be satisfied with?
Well, they should be, because it looked like this guy Wolff, who's a writer, was conspiring with Epstein to do harm to me. And I didn't see it myself, but I was told by some very important people that not only does it absolve me, it's the opposite of what people were hoping, the radical left, that Wolff was a third-rate writer, was conspiring with Jeffrey Epstein to hurt me, politically or otherwise, and that came through loud and clear. So we'll probably sue Wolff on that.
Folks, just as Donald Trump's attorneys threatened to sue me recently, and this is I think the third time he's threatened to sue me. And when I tell you that our response literally included the words "go and fuck yourself," it did. It was the lawyer letter in response was a work of high art, I will assure you. He's not going to sue Michael Wolff. He's not going to sue Michael Wolff. And again, the more he tries to dig in and project, oh, it exonerated me. Oh, it's the Democrats in the files. It tells you how nervous he is about this. Whatever Blanch and Bondi and Patel and the rest of the FBI guys are still hiding, they're in the shit. They have already violated the black letter law of the Epstein Transparency Act, okay? They have already redacted things that should not have been redacted, including the names of all these powerful men that should not have been redacted, okay? They're already in trouble. And now it's becoming something that even Chuck frickin' Schumer understands the game a little better now on the floor of the Senate today. Let's play. This just happened just before we came on the air. Let's roll that.
With some breaking news on Capitol Hill, where just moments ago, Senator Chuck Schumer made an announcement about the Epstein files. Take a look.
Today, I come to the floor to seek unanimous passage of a resolution directing the Senate to sue the Trump administration for violating the Epstein Files Transparency Act. 15 of my Democratic colleagues have joined in co-sponsoring this resolution, and I thank every single one of them for standing firm. I urge my Republican colleagues not to stand in the way today. It's the height of absurdity for Republicans to have supported the Epstein Files Transparency Act, but then go ahead and object to enforcing it. What hypocrisy.
Guys, Republicans are nervous as hell. They're looking at a set of polling numbers. I'm going to go through some of them tomorrow on Behind the Numbers with Andrew and I. We're going to go through that tomorrow morning. I want to just walk you through them. Why Epstein is the boat anchor around their necks when they look at all these other polling numbers, and I'll tell you why that is in a second. On the economy, broadly, he's approximately 20 points underwater. Nobody's buying the Golden Age Act. Nobody's buying the Tariffs Are Working Act. Nobody's buying the I brought in $18 trillion gazillion to the Economy Act, because it's not true. We had cataclysmic job numbers, markets tanking, Bitcoin is finally meeting its inevitable Ponzi-ish demise. You've got an economy that is terrifying people. When Joe Biden left office, he had a 2.99% inflation rate. We now have a 2.7% inflation rate. Inflation's still scaring people. Trump's numbers on inflation, underwater approximately 20 points. Trump's numbers on foreign policy, underwater approximately 15 points. Trump's overall approval rating in the mid to low 30s now, depending on the poll, and if it's a likely voter poll modeled off the voter file, it's in the mid to low 30s. Among all voters, it's in the mid to high 30s. That is cataclysmic for these guys running next year. They need their base to be fired up. They need their base to be excited. They need their base to be happy, warriors going out there kicking ass. And instead, they're going to have their base is out thinking like, oh, well, God, this Epstein stuff, man, it's awful. What am I going to do? That's Jilly behind me. She's old. She's cold. She's wearing a sweater. Because in Florida today, it's cold. For Florida, I know it's a different standard. I know some of you live in places that have actual weather. So these polling numbers are so awful. These economic numbers are so bad. And you'd think, well, maybe the president's got another part of his agenda that's working out for us. Well, immigration's always good, right? No, guys. The country has had a transformative moment on immigration. Right now, 62% of Americans think there should be a pathway to legal citizenship for people who are here on an undocumented basis. Only 32% think they should be deported. That is inverted since the ICE deployment into our streets as a military force. About 60% of Americans want ICE to be dissolved. About 60% of Americans think that the Trump administration is lying about Alex Preddy and Renee Good. Immigration has turned into a radioactive piece of waste around their necks. Republicans know that the House is hanging by a thread. It's a one-vote margin right now. And by the way, Barry Loudermilk, who I mentioned earlier, that seat in Georgia, that don't look so good. That's a Republican seat, too. And now it's like there's like 27 MAGA crazies getting in the race. If the Democrats put a sensible person in there, which I knock wood, think is going to happen, Mike Johnson might not be speaker. And by the way, Massey, who is under amazing pressure, is holding up, basically saying no. He's going to work. He's trying to win his primary. Trump's going after him, hammer and tongs. But you know, Tom, if I may call you Tom, you have the chance to do the funniest thing ever if Trump keeps fucking with you. Doesn't mean you're not a conservative. It means you're a player. Just tell Johnson, you're caucusing now as an independent. Think about it. But the reason Epstein is weighing on them underneath all this is that you can't pretend things are normal otherwise. You can't say, the economy's so great, I'm willing to overlook this. Trump's leadership is so cool and steady and calm under pressure, I'm willing to overlook this. Nobody is happy in the MAGA world right now. And I can tell you something. When Chris LaCivita and Tony the pollster, who run Trump's outside political operation, went to Corey Lewandowski, Kristi Noem, Stephen Miller, and said, you got to pull ICE out of Maine right now because we're going to lose that seat. Gave the whole game away. The whole game was given away at that point. The entire thing. It tells you exactly what this is. This is intimidation. in blue states. This is the authoritarian warm-up that they've desperately craved for so long. And now we're talking about building these ICE concentration camps, because that's what they are, folks. Just because it's in a warehouse doesn't make it different. This is the construction of concentration camps in this country in commercially leased warehouse space. No, they're not out in the desert like the camps that interned the Japanese here in World War II, or the camps that interned Jews and gypsies and gay people and everybody else in Germany. The ICE game is so central to keeping the MAGA base happy, or was. Even Republicans, a plurality of Republicans now, aren't happy about how ICE is handling their job. But they're going to keep up the excesses because they have to make more noise to cover up for the next tranche that's going to inevitably come out. You know, we had the first wave of documents that came out were released almost a year ago to that dipshit crew of MAGA influencers. Again, Jack Posobiec, Roland Handjob, or whatever his name is, all these, MAGA scamfluencer types. At that time, remember, Bondi said, "Oh, I've got the Epstein files on my desk," which is fascinating now, given the volume. We know what the Epstein files are, but okay. And then it was, "Oh, no. Kash Patel says, oh, no, he never trafficked anybody except to himself." Clearly untrue. The DOJ's cover-up is going to collapse on them. This is a very bad thing for them. In Congress, in the Senate in particular, it's going to get harder and harder to keep a coalition together to protect Trump like it did before. Now, I know Mike Lee and those idiots are beating the drum. The SAVE Act is the only thing. We're going to burn the building down if we don't get the SAVE Act. What are you going to do? Send protesters in to try to destroy the country? But they don't have much more here. The cover-up is going to wrap up Bondi. It's going to wrap up Patel. It's going to bring Danny Bong Bingo back from his podcast studio at Hamhead Central. And it's going to get Todd Blanch. I'm going to tell you why it's going to get Todd Blanch. Because Todd Blanch went down to here, right here, where I live, Tallahassee, Florida, when Ghislaine Maxwell was in the Tallahassee Women's Correctional Facility. And he sat with her, did this interview, where she said Donald Trump was a gentleman and a scholar and this and that and all this other crap. And somehow, he got moved to the cushiest federal prison in the country, Club Fed, Barton, Texas. Somehow, magically, for no reason, just Blanch's a nice guy. They've lied consistently about who ordered the move. This is going to get caught out. And now that we know that the following letter was in her federal case file, I'm going to show it to you on the screen here. Hang on a second. Yeah, so this is when Bondi took over all of the material. February 27th, 2025. Okay, before Todd Blanch came on board. And then, oh, look at that. In the file, where in 2015, she's laying out her defense. We now know from the rest of the Epstein files that this defense was a lie. At this point, the things she was asserting to Todd Blanch in Tallahassee are in conflict with her other assertions during her trial. Todd, you got some splaining to do, Chief. It's not going to work out, buddy. Long story short, the Republicans in the Senate and the House do not have the majorities sufficient to protect Trump from oversight on this. And a lot of them are starting to think about it. A lot of them are having that moment. They're like, oh, shit, man. When do I cut the line? When do I jump? They're never going to come out and go, I hate Donald Trump. I'm joining the Lincoln Project. I hate them. I'm a never Trumper. They're never going to say that. But they're going to stop being there for the vote. They're going to stop standing up and saying, nothing Donald Trump has ever done is wrong. The Epstein files are a nothing burger. Guys, between Epstein and immigration, those two things have been this acid bath underneath the Republican Party this year that is, well, look, at Lincoln, when we built out our model for this year, we said, okay, it's 26. Let's look at 26 races. And the top end of those races, like the ragged edge when we started of those races was like R+9, R+8. We thought those are reach races. Now, it is not today. It is not this minute. But if the election were held today, the Democrats would win 45 seats in the House and take back the Senate. I don't know that that's going to be what we get to in the fall, but I can tell you there is a mathematical model right now where those numbers are possible. And the more this thing continues to corrode and erode Trump's credibility, which is, already pretty much zero with most Americans, with his own base, because he's screwing it up with his own base, guys. He's screwing up Epstein with his own base. They don't trust him. They don't believe what he's saying. Okay. You'll notice even a lot of like the diehards are like, oh, I think we should just try to move on from this. To what? Immigration? A majority now of working class white voters disagree with the way ICE is behaving in our streets. It is a remarkable moment. So, like I said, the article was called "The Epstein Iceberg." It's on my Substack at Against All Enemies. Appreciate you guys watching today. We did about a half hour today. We'll come back again soon. And I also want to thank again Ground News for sponsoring this segment. They are terrific. It is a tool that I use both on the website and on the app because it gives me a perspective on the news and the media that you don't get otherwise. It talks to you about the blind spots. It talks to you about bias, talks to you about factuality, and it gives you a way to assess the ownership and how all those things combine and how media and stories are covered. And in an age where independent media is more important than ever, you've also got to be an independent thinker about the way you consume media. And Ground News can really help you with that. Folks, click on the link below or check that QR code out. Or go to groundnews.com/Rick. You get 40% off the Vantage plan, which is a full subscription. That's the same one I use. It's the full boat. You'll really like it. I really appreciate you watching today, and I'll talk to you again soon. Thanks, folks.